Hello, taking cue from my last lecture where I have put a set of criterion, recall that, and now we start discussing individually. Mind it, I have not put them here or listed them here in the order of priority. No, it is priority that you will decide, the designer will decide. But I always felt that the trees or plants which grow in a particular location, they are culturally most conducive. So what you do is that if I am asked to put them on priority, I will first put the cultural at the top and the rest in no priority, no order of priority. So cultural. Take an example. You have been asked to design a landscape project in an area which is highly rain prone. Let's say in our country, Assam, highly rain prone. And now you have to design the landscape. The first thing what you need to know is which are the plants which are perennial to that locality. That means which plants are growing in that location. If you select those plants, see, you have a host of plants in your inventory. Out of that, if you now shortlist that these are the plants which are within, which are culturally conducive to that rain prone area in Assam, then automatically your shortlisting is easy. Rest of the trees, keep it in abeyance. You may always recall back if necessary, but the point is you are now selecting based on which trees are going to grow there. This cultural condition is very, very important. Okay, and after that the rest. So I am now discussing one after another the way I have listed over here. You know, the way you will see this particular lecture is now arranged. There are many aspects which I will be just touching upon here, but I will go into the detail in the next set when I will go sequentially there. Visual criteria, let us say, what all we have to see. First is overall scale at maturity. The look wise, a plant, whatever type it is, should be seen in view of what is the overall scale at maturity. Finally, what happens? See, some trees will grow to its almost matured shape and size and height and all that within 5 years, if it is very rapidly growing. Some trees will take 10 years, some trees will take 15 years. The point is, you may not be there to see this. You may be somewhere else in the another part of the world, but you must have a clear idea about that particular plant, that in 15 years this is going to grow to this kind of shape, profile and all that. That means overall scale, how it is going to be, because you take it as a sort of three-dimensional object that is you are going to play with in your entire landscape project. One. Then comes the foliage profile. Foliage profile is this. How it looks like. Foliage profile is this. I will discuss this in detail, okay, in sequence. So you take care of the overall scale in maturity and then the foliage profile, and then you take care of the habit. What is habit? Habit is basically nothing to do with the kind of habit that we use very frequently for ourselves. Habit is a branching pattern which is technically called habit in plant sciences. That means a branching pattern. It is something like this, that if suppose let us take this particular picture in which if I see that they have the branching like this, or it is, and if you overlook the actual foliage profile, then the rest of the things which is left is a branching, and that is what is called habit. That means what is the branching pattern of this, and the best way to see this branching pattern is for deciduous trees. During when it has shaded all its leaves, you see the real habit of it. Or else if it is an evergreen tree, then you have to really make your effort to visually disregard the leaves intercepted between your view and then try to find out, configure what is the branching. That is habit. Okay. Then foliage attributes. Foliage attributes is essentially with respect to this, if I have said that this is profile, then in between whatever is there, it is filled with whatever except branches. That means it is essentially the branches pattern that you have taken care of when you have reviewed the habit, and here you are trying to see that what is the foliage nature. What happens is you have to check with respect to the foliage density. Foliage means leaves basically within it, okay, within that particular solid mass, solid volume here, the leaves, okay. What is the density of it? You have a full volume within which you now have a leaf mass. How many leaves? If you really take the entire leaves out and ultimately compute how much is the mass, then that's a mass over that entire volume will give you that what is the density of it. Now, simple density will not matter, will not be enough. You have to also see that how are they layered, how are they placed over each other. The leaves are placed over each other, and also how it is distributed over. It is better that I'll discuss this, but I'll come to the characteristics of plants, and then I'll go into the detail of it. Okay, so the foliage attributes, how it is there. Then seasonal attributes. In different seasons, how this tree is going to be visually presenting to yourself. You must have noticed. See, when I'm giving this example, I did not really pick up the pictures. The reason is that there are so many examples of varied examples. If I give you one picture, that sets in your mind. No. My suggestion is that when you are listening to me, and if you have understood what I'm saying, then you judge it yourself in real life, near your house. You just look at a tree, try to see in different seasons and see how it manifests. At this moment, I can just cite one example. There is a tree called Ashoka in front of my house. Ashoka tree is Polyalthia pendula, and just next to it there is another tree, Polyalthia longifolia. That's Devdar. Now these two trees, they present different kind of appearance to me over the season, and I really enjoy it. What is the kind of appearance? At one point it is, at this point of time I can tell you, it is shedding its brown leaves, and now it has the green leaves, very, very light green leaf. Light green means I'm just trying to show you this is the kind of color I'm seeing, okay. And when it is normal cases, this is the kind of color that I do see. This is the kind of color I do see. That means the same tree is going to give me different kind of appearance at different point of time. At this point when it is shading its leaves, the shading of leaves is almost very, very, I would say almost together. That means growth of the leaf and the shading of the leaves is almost simultaneous. So now when I'm looking at the tree, I'm not simply seeing the light color leaves. I'm seeing the brown color leaves which is just about to be shaded or dropped, and over this another green leaf. You have to be really sensitive to understand what I'm saying. If you are, it is a matter of experience and practice. Look at the tree that way. At this point, every day I watch that Devdar tree, and at one point of time I'll find all the brown leaves have been shaded, and all the green leaves, light green leaves, will gradually become darker, and now I'll have a dark mass. So the thing is, the whole visual criteria, the same tree at different season, different time, will behave differently. Rather, it will represent differently in your views. This is what is very, very sensitive aspects of visual criterion. Because see, the interesting thing is, for plants, for trees, since it is mostly leaves with chlorophylls and chloroplasts with green color and few sporadic flower colors and some branch colors, but mostly if you look at it, it's green. So the plants are mostly green dominated in visual aspects, and if it is true, then do you see the same green? There is something called hue in our color theory. The hue is the name of that particular color, and if green I take as a hue, there are multiple such sub-hues of the green. That means it's not one green. It's like we call as sap green, we call light green, we call viridian and viridian green. So there are many such kind of green. So these are all different hues. So when you look at the landscape, why the landscape, despite being green, is also very varied in our visual reactions. It is because it has multiple hues which are blended or just juxtaposed over each other. So this has to be understood. Okay. Then the bark color, we cannot disregard the bark color. Not only bark color, the bark's characteristics, bark color, bark texture. See, in this foliage, if I see, I have only talked about the density, layering and distribution. If you look at the foliage, the texture of it, the glaze of it, the shininess of it, the dullness of it, the brightness of it, if you start seeing a plant really just watch one tree. My suggestion is, if you start liking this particular subject, then focus on only one tree and start evaluating it. The way after this criteria discussion, I'll go into the entire characteristics, and after that I would suggest that end of this today's lecture, I would be suggesting you to focus on only one tree and try to understand all the points that I have discussed. See as much as you can configure out of it, and then see what is the real meaning of each tree as a plant material. Okay, the bark color, then the bark texture, relation to surroundings. That means one tree with respect to the rest, one tree with respect to the other trees, one tree with respect to no other trees, maybe the green lawns, one tree against the structure or a building or any other items. Height characteristics, the height will matter in terms of visuals. I'll go to the details of this. The clustering aesthetics, if the trees are in groups, in clusters, the aesthetics that is represented by that. Then accentuating means how a tree or plant gets accentuated by virtue of its own intrinsic visual potential. That means the tree attracts you. Recently you must have seen that in Kashmir a tulip garden has been opened. In the newspaper it has been very nicely covered, and I liked it. The thing is, tulip garden, we are really not very much, we don't get a chance to see much, but looking at the photographs of that tulip garden, if you see, you must be noticing that the people are overjoyed because the tulips are different color planted in a particular sequence. They are giving such a wonderful attractive picture frame that it accentuates. All the tulips flowers are not of the same color, but the thing is, overall the red, the yellow and other colors mixed, the way it is done, it accentuates. So accentuation, when it is happening, it may be with respect to one plant or it may be with respect to a group of plants. Okay. Special properties, if there is any. There may be some special properties in terms of its fruits, in terms of fragrance, in terms of its the nature. The special properties, let me just cite one example. In my next series, I'll be detailing it out in the phase 2 of my lectures. I'll be showing you various samples, various examples, which I tried to restrict this time because we have a brevity of time. Special properties, I'm just naming one tree. The high sounding name, a long name, you may not be able to remember, but it's Callistemon lanceolatus. Callistemon lanceolatus, the name does not make any sense to you. It was also not making any sense to me unless and until I saw the tree. When I first saw the tree, I found its common English name is red bottle brush. Red bottle brush, something, bottle brush, I know, red bottle brush. Then I started looking for this particular tree, and you know what I found? It is a tree with a flower. You remember the bottle brush that we have for cleaning our baby bottles, baby milk bottles, something like this. This kind we have, isn't it? This kind of brushes that we have for cleaning the baby bottles. Absolutely red color flower. Special property is this. It is such a kind of flower which is unique. There are other flowers I found a similarity in its shapes and forms and everything, but this is excellently one unique kind of flower. This is a special property of that tree. Now the point is, if you see a Callistemon lanceolatus, red bottle brush tree, which is usually preferred to be planted next to the water bodies, you will find the tree does not really reflect much of an attractiveness, but the moment you look at the tree and if it is flowering, your entire focus gets accentuated to the flowers, and you get really overwhelmed by what nature has created. This is how it is. So the thing is, in the whole visual criteria, what you do is you see overall scale, profile, the habits, the branching patterns, the foliage attributes, and then in season how it is appearing to you, the bark color, bark texture, and its existence or relationship with respect to the surroundings, the height, the clustering aesthetics, how it looks together, accentuating properties of it, special properties, and the flowering attributes. This offers you the visual. There are many more attributes which will be maybe giving you the idea about the visuals, but I have just tried to, out of all those attributes or characteristics, I tried to classify them under visual, so that you know that if you take care of this, it it is fine. In visual attributes, let me just tell you one more information, or maybe I'll just reserve it for when I'll talk about the flowering pattern. Next is the functional criteria. That means it has to be functional. The plants which are functional. What kind of functionality? Canopy characteristics means it is this picture. If you look at this particular sheet, this picture, it gives a canopy. But this particular tree does not give a canopy. This gives a kind of profile. This we call, technically in our landscape language, we call this as a soffit. This particular part we call this as soffit. Just like we borrow this term soffit from our architectural terminology. Okay, so this soffit, the moment the soffit is concave towards the ground, it has a wonderful canopy characteristics. The moment this particular soffit is convex away from the ground, the canopy characteristics is gradually diminishing. So if you stand below a tree like this or stand below a tree like this, it is something like, say, a person standing here and a person standing here. He will have more sense of spatial formation than this. If you recall, I was discussing this about the behavioral things. The overhead plane has a value of 3. The overhead plane, more you tilt upward, upward and upward, ultimately it becomes 0. The overhead plane, if you make it bend towards it, increases in strength. If you bend upward, bend it like this, it diminishes in its value. Same thing happens over here. So functionally, if the canopy characteristics you want, it is, you get it like this. Then comes a spread. Spread is, I'm using the same sketch here just to minimize my time of sketching. Spread refers to this, the foliage spread, how much it is. Then the fragrance, it is functional. Some people may put it under aesthetics. Fine, aesthetics, since it's to do with the mind, I have no objection, but I put it as a functional. I will make a garden where planting several such plants selected well, and where you enter and you get a nice fragrance. You like it, like rose garden. When you enter a rose garden, is it only because to see how the rose looks like? No. Or how the roses look like? That also is not true. You also would like to have a fragrance. Unfortunately, if you go to a very formal garden, you are not allowed to really smell being closer to it. And the roses smell, it does not really come out very strongly outward. It is, you have to be within a certain distance, closer distance, so that you get the fragrance of it. But you think about one tree, I'm not really remembering its botanical name. I'll find it out and later on tell you. It's called Muchkunda. Muchkunda is a tree which is now growing at this point of time in the tropical climate. In our IIT Kharagpur campus, it is growing now. The leaf is very shoddy. The flower is also not very attractive, but in the evening, you get a wonderful fragrance in the vicinity, far away from the tree. If you take the flower and then smell, definitely you will get a very strong smell, no doubt about it. But that's not the way, because it's a large tree, the flowers at a very great height. So you are not supposed to smell it. The fragrance you are not supposed to get when you are closer to this. But the thing is, when you are around that particular area, one single Muchkunda tree will give a wonderful fragrance in the vicinity. By virtue of this also, you can do the landscape zoning. That I'll discuss later on when I'll talk about the park planning and other things. Okay. So fragrance, another functional. Fruiting attributes. Many of the plants will have fruiting attributes. Means it has fruits. I think I talked about it, or maybe let me just tell you. Some trees which have very strong landscape applications are mango, guava, tamarind, jackfruit, jamun, even your drumstick. These are the trees which I'm naming. They are very commonly applied in our landscapes, maybe in the form of orchards, maybe. But the thing is, still they are. You can also make a wonderful avenue plantation with a tamarind tree. You can make wonderful avenue plantation with a mango tree. So here I am talking about functionality in terms of fruiting. Whenever the fruiting is an attribute I'll use, I'll rather term that as functional in terms of orchards. The same thing can be used for my economic criterion also. When I'm trying to make a particular landscape in which the plantations will be such that which will give me an economic return, then the fruiting attributes is one of the strongest. Okay. Then backdrop. It is something like, let me explain. You have an object and you want to create a backdrop behind, and in this you have planted those trees which will have, I'm trying to draw very quickly, so don't judge my drawing skill. If I take time, it will become much better. You have an object in the landscape, you want to create a backdrop, the tree is used. This set of tree is functionally now working as a backdrop. There are many ways, like if I now try to draw the backdrop in flat, this I tried to give a little bit of 3D idea. See, I can create backdrop with trees like this, and in between again a tree like this. Okay, different scale, different size, but the thing is, actually there is a backdrop. We have one such example. I found this example in Jamshedpur Jubilee Park, where Jain Tata statue is there. Behind that the trees are planted. They are very finely leaved, so you don't get a very solid backdrop. But the thing is, different size of plants are placed in such a way that you have a very nice screening backdrop. So the strength of the backdrop, the perforations of the backdrop, or the solidity of the backdrop, all these are your matter of discretion, how you are designing. I'm just trying to give an idea overall. Physical barrier means you can always plant your trees in such a way that you are going to obstruct. This is a place where one could move from this point to this point, and at this point place you plant trees. When you are planting trees, now let me draw two situations. One is that I plant a tree here. This does not make any physical barrier, because people, they can pass through between the trunks. But if suppose you would have selected a set of tree which is almost touching from the ground, like Ashoka, and then ultimately plant in a row, then what happens is, in plan it looks like this, and this is physically different. Now this is the kind of thing that you can always experiment in your design. So the criterion you have to decide. Visual barrier, same thing. Like, see, you, for giving a visual obstruction or visual privacy from one space to the other. If you remember, I discussed this during my landform design as well. Now what happens is, the visual barrier, if you want to create, give a series of trees. That's why in many cases you will find that the boundaries of the residences, individual residences, which requires a visual privacy, at the periphery they have a boundary wall for physical obstruction, and just within, inside, they have a series of vegetations or plants which are planted, which are now visually stopping the view, at the same time offering a nice view to the insiders. So these are all experiments you can always do. There is another functional criterion that is very, very, I would say this becomes a problem for us in the landscape. The household and the building utility. This is really a problem, I will tell you, for landscapists. Do you know why? I will give an example. See, the trees which have very strong household and building utility, if you plant in the landscape, there is quite a chance that if you are not really being taken care of it in terms of security or safety, those are likely to be removed or vandaled from your site. An example, like if you have teak trees, Tectona grandis, teak. If you have teak tree, or if you have sal tree, these trees, they are of strong building utility for household utility. They are very quickly vandaled by people, not cattle, because this teak is so costly. Sal. See, I have seen also, you must have heard that, say, sandalwood, this can be used in your landscape for fragrance purposes. Okay, this fragrance which I have listed here in the functional means I want to have a, say, split a little bit, you will start getting the sandalwood fragrance. But the thing is, they have very strong other household utilities, so naturally they are subjected to vandalisms. So here, but however, the point is, whether it is vandaled, you are protecting or not, it's a different issue. But the thing is, they have the function. Okay, then medicinal utility. There are many plants which have very strong medicinal utility. Now, an example, let me tell you. There's a tree called Terminalia arjuna, locally called Arjuna tree. Botanical name is Terminalia arjuna. The Arjuna tree's speciality is very peculiar. I'm using the same plate for your discussion. If suppose the Arjuna tree is so large and it is like this, this part, the lower part, which is accessible to the people, are of highly medicinal value. That high medicinal value is interestingly makes the tree susceptible to vandalisms. See, people don't take away the tree because the skin, the lower portion skin, has strong medicinal value. So local villagers, and the medicinal value is for the digestive problems. Local villagers, they spot those trees, and at some opportune moment, they will, they will just scrape out the top layer of this particular bark and take it for their consumption for medicinal value. This is what is the problem for us. In the landscape, I don't want the tree to be disfigured, defaced. But however, problem is a problem that we should find out the solution. But the thing is, they have the utilities. And at the same time, let's say, if suppose you are deciding that I will make a garden which will be a herbal garden, what's wrong? Possible. The client's objective is that he has a piece of land and he has money and he wants to build a herbal garden over there. In that herbal garden, you have to now select all those plants which are of medicinal value, medicines and herbs nature. Once you do that, then that is first choice functionally. So what you will do is, now with respect to the process that I have said in the steps, what you will do is you will first find out which are the herbs or medicinal plants which are going to grow in this locality. That means you are having a cultural criterion sieve. After that, you are taking those plants and then trying to go to the next sieve is called functional criterion, not aesthetics. It doesn't matter if it does not look good. So you take functional criteria. The functional criteria, once you've taken, then your herbal or medicinal value becomes the supreme out against all these that I have listed over here in this particular list. It becomes medicinal utility, which is the supreme, and based on the medicinal utility you select it. Once you select it, then you try to find out that out of so many medicinal plants which are looking good. So when you arrange it, you try to arrange it in such a way that ultimately the whole garden looks good, because somewhere, even if it is going to give you the benefits, people are going to come and see, and they are going to enjoy. So when they are going to enjoy, the arrangement of it, the positioning of it, and the placement of each other, one component with another, all these will make a lot of sense. So you have to take care of this. Then comes the environmental criterion. Environmental criteria, I'll go a little quickly on this. Air purification is one of the strong things. Whether it is going to absorb the carbon dioxide or it's going to generate oxygen, this becomes very, very important. Other environmental criteria, I'm just going to show you the list, you will understand very easily. Interception of solar radiation. Whether the tree intercepts the solar radiation. The solar radiation is coming and hitting the tree, being obstructed, does not reach the other part of the lower part of this, whether it's a pavement or a building, and the building and the pavement remains cooler. So this interception capability has to be judged. My research is going on this particular area as well. Shading attributes. So not only intercepting, how much it is intercepting, is also how much it is shading. That means the volume or the mass, how it is affecting the shading zones, it matters. So that is another, shading attributes. And another thing you will find that, see, the different plants or different trees will have different kind of leaf sizes and their distribution in the whole foliage. So naturally, that porosity of that particular foliage, or the layers of leaves against each other, all these will make a difference whenever it is going to come to the solar radiation interception or even the shading devices. So you have to take care of this. Then comes the transpiration index. You are very much aware that the tree is going to take the water through the roots from the soil below the surface, and then that particular water will be passing through the tissues and the xylems and ultimately go to the leaf, and the leaf is going to transpire. So basically it's just it is a circulation of the water, whole hydrological cycle through the tree that's going to affect. And what we are concerned about environmentally is the transpiration. That means how much water is going to be transpired by the leaves of that particular tree or a particular tree. Now each leaf may be once it transpires, then we have to find out what's its index, that how much it transpires. And if we know that, we also can assess that how much water is going to be contributed to the microclimate or to the adjoining atmosphere, so that we can make effect of this. And then comes the temperature reduction, that if the transpiration is happening, then naturally the air particles which are surrounding this particular tree, which contains a certain amount of thermal heat, and now the water is being added to it by transpiration. So naturally there is going to be a cooling effects, and that cooling, how much it is resulting into temperature reduction, that matters. Then comes the humidity increase. Okay, temperature reduction is one, but how much humidity have I increased to the entire area? The dew formations that you do see, like say, to a great extent it is through the air temperature changes, at the same time transpiration that is happening from the grass and the other trees. So when you see fog, you have to understand, if this is absolutely dry, the fog may be little, but if it is very much vegetated, the fog may be thick. So point is how much humidity is being added. Resistance to pollution. Each tree, truly speaking, there is not much of study on this, which tree is resistant to the pollution level, because pollution are of different kind. Then it requires a very in-depth research, that how much pollution, what kind of pollution, what kind of chemical or other pollutions, and then what is the degree of resistance. But however, still it is resistance or susceptibility or sensitivity to the pollution is another criterion that we take into consideration. So sensitiveness, how sensitive it is. This can only be viewed over a long period of time. If suppose the authority takes a decision that okay, we will be watching the tree over 10-15 years, depending on the pollution level, whether there is real direct correlation between the pollution level and this sensitivity or resistance of these plants, which we do have. It requires a good amount of study. I'll tell you, it's not easy. But however, still there are some studies. I'll be citing some. Soil erosion resistance, that the area which is susceptible to the erosions due to the wind as well as the water erosions, whether the tree has any capability of resisting that. Dust interception attributes, and then noise interception attributes. I'll go into the details when I'll be coming to the different attributes of it. Dust interception is basically like say in the urban areas, when you find that the vehicles are moving and there is a dust storm which is generated because of the interaction of the tire or the release of the tire from a particular surface of the road, and then the dust is it's flown out through eddies, and that dust some of the quantity of the dust will be falling by self precipitation, and some will be impacted and it will be moving towards the lateral directions. Whenever it is going to go there, the tree, if it is placed next to it, how it is going to stop. This discussion will come again in the next stage of next phase very much in detail, but that is, this point is the tree can also intercept dust, and there are noise interception. In this case, yes, tree can also intercept noise because it has a mass, but the point is the amount of reduction that it can affect in terms of noise dB level. I have strong doubts that one tree, single tree, or maybe just a series of tree, how much effective it is, because noise reduction is a function of the distance, inversely square of the distance. So if the distance factor is not taken care of, then probably the noise will not be reduced by a single series of tree, unless it has very other strong attributes. Okay, and the fragrance, that is also environmental. I have given it functional as well as in the environmental, means I want to create a kind of fragrant environment, ambience. And the aesthetic appearance, that's also taken as environmental, because looking good, environment is what? Environment is the effect of the surroundings in your mind and the body. And if you feel good by smelling something, good smell of the flowers, fragrance works as environmental issues. And if it looks good, it gives you pleasure, though it is visually taken care of. But the thing is, this aesthetic experience is also clubbed under environmental criterion. So next, again, I will discuss about other criterion and then go into the detail of this. Enjoy. Thank you.